And today is Thursday. You know what that means. We're going to have a special guest. Actually, we have special guests on the program all the time and throughout the week. But today we've got somebody on the program. First, let me tell you who I've got in the studio with me. Pastor Brian Broderson of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa in Southern California. Bobby Conway, the YouTube sensation. You can find out more about him at 1 Minute Apologist, or I should say search for 1 Minute Apologist, and you can find his thousands of hundreds of videos.
We wish thousands.
It'll be thousands eventually, but right now it's hundreds. But on the Skype line with us is Jim Daly from Focus on the Family. Jim, welcome to Pastor's Perspective.
Hey, it's great to be with you guys. I think we just had a motorcycle go by. You may have heard that. I think they're racing in the parking lot.
Yeah, that usually happens when you get on an important call with important people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we do. We drag race. Anyway, how are you guys?
We're doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. You know, the weather is changing here. It's nice to get some warm weather. And, you know, I think everybody's dying to get out and just experience life again, right?
Yeah. How is the lockdown in Colorado? Is it pretty intense or has it been sort of mild or?
I'd say it's been mild. I mean, we had a shelter-in-place order with our governor, but the governor, Polis, he was back with President Trump, I think, 2 days ago, and they seemed to have a really friendly exchange. I think our governor, Democrat, is actually quite progressive toward a reopening. He's very business-minded. So I think he's kind of lining up more with what you see from the Republican governors. But it's been great. And I don't, politicizing it is not the issue. I just think I'm grateful for the governors who are wanting to be safety-minded, but move toward reopening. We've got to get people back to the normal gear, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's good to see you. It's been a while since we've been able to touch base.
Yeah, likewise. Well, I love KWAVE, and for your listeners, I know KWAVE was the first radio station I started listening to as a Christian when I was 17, 18 years old. So
right?
Thank you for how you poured into my life.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
we
awesome.
Tomorrow will be 35 years and 1 month.
35 years and 1 month. Now we're counting the months.
Now we're counting.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's
right.
That's kind of scary because I probably started listening to you about the time you started. Wow, I didn't realize
we
that.
won't do the math.
Hey, we're getting old. Yeah, it's all right, but it's fun. It's great memories. I hope you guys in California, I've been, watching some of the coverage on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even the Newport Beach mayor, Mayor O'Neill, I saw him on one show. And so hopefully everybody can pull together for the right things, right?
Yeah. It's been, I'd say it's been fairly manageable for us, especially in our county here in Orange County. You know, it's been a little rougher for the LA County folks. And then they just got the word couple of days ago that they're going to be on lockdown through the summer, which I think a few people lost their minds. But
and they're all going to be down here in Orange County,
I was going to say, they're all moving. Suddenly there's an influx.
Okay, I got to tell you, I have a friend, a donor actually, that owns some hotels in Orange County, and he said he was very happy to hear about that because he said for the first time some people from LA might be coming back to Orange County.
Yeah, everybody at the beach is saying, no.
I know, exactly.
Stay away.
Yeah.
No, that's so funny.
Yeah. So for us, it's been, it's been pretty manageable. And, from city to city, you kind of have some different ordinances, like in Costa Mesa where I live, you got to wear a mask if you go into a store. If I cross the bridge into Huntington Beach, they don't really care. They're kind of, if you want to wear one, great. If you don't. So it's really, it's kind of an interesting thing to see.
They're hang loose, right?
Yeah. That's kind of and they've always,
thing.
I grew up in Huntington, so it's always been an outlier, kind of a rebel city, so it's following its history. So,
I woke up this morning to my wife with foil in her hair. Her hairstylist showed up at our house at 8:00 this morning.
Is that right?
And brought all of her utensils and was doing my wife's hair. My wife has had enough of going gray, and so she wanted to sport her younger-looking color, I guess. So that's what's happening.
Okay. Well, good for her.
You're going to be arrested.
Yeah. Let's not say who that hairstylist was.
That's right. No, we won't. We won't.
My daughter is a hairstylist, and she just got a notification from the state that if they catch you, doing anything, they will revoke your license. And I know a few people in Orange County have had their license revoked
Wow.
for 3 years.
Oh, I was just kidding,
penalized.
guys. I didn't.
Well,
You just
sad.
wanted to have
you know,
something
It
relevant.
was just
to
a
say.
dream that your
That's
wife
right.
was getting her hair done. Yeah.
And Brian, I think that's part of what's going on because out here in Colorado, the haircutting places have reopened as of it was April 26th. So
Really?
we've been getting our haircut. That's the disparity issue
Yeah.
with the different states, right?
Yeah.
So
You
one
know,
person gets their license revoked for 3 years, and out here they're cutting hair for cash.
Yeah, and right when I saw you, I thought Jim's got a great haircut. I mean,
Sports clip, baby.
so Jim, Brian, Lance just told me that you've kind of been talking to everybody, some of the bigger, people in the political world around the country. Of course, I know that you're always hobnobbing with those people, but what great wisdom can you pass on to us through your conversations? I mean, what do you get any kind of a feel?
Yeah, the one thing that we wanted to do with the focus program was to be able to get some COVID-19 expertise in here. And thankfully, we were able to do that. We had the Surgeon General, Jerome Adams, on talking about, that was right during the mask conflict. And he had kind of backtracked on his recommendation. So we talked about that. And it was so good. One, he's a Christian, and that's awesome to see people in this leadership moment. Many of them are Christian.
Yeah.
And to hear him say, you know what, we learned more. And as we learned more, we adjusted our advice.
Yeah.
And I think that's good leadership.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's unfortunate that, these poor folks that are serving in government, when they're trying to do the right thing and they have to adjust because they have learnings that apply different, ways forward, then they get pounced upon. I think it's a great thing. So I would encourage them to continue to learn and to change.
Yeah.
But we also had Mike Pompeo on, the Secretary of State, on Monday, talking about the global perspective, religious liberties, and the issue about China and what the administration is looking at there. And then right down the line, a lot of marriage and parenting experts. One of the good pieces of advice that I've heard about is some survey work where 4 out of 5 marriages are actually doing better in this environment. And I think I would say that my wife's marriage, our marriage is doing better because it's true. And in part because the hastiness of life is kind of scaled back a bit.
Yeah.
So I'm able to spend time in the morning with Jean. 7, 8 o'clock, we're praying together, reading the word together. And it's developed an intimacy within us that, unfortunately, I could tell you, even as a Christian leader, I was too busy to do that before. And this has been one of the silver linings around this. It's not that I didn't want to, it's just that, man, I had to get to the office by 7:30 because I had a phone call and this commitment and that commitment. But boy, hasn't that been one of the amazing observations about this moment is when those time requirements are pulled back, you're really concentrating on what's eternal.
Yeah.
And that's been awesome.
Yeah. And that's good news to hear that 4 out of 5 marriages are actually doing better in this time. Because,
we need it.
Yeah. Because, you hear little bits and pieces out there it's not substantiated. It's just but marriages are on the rocks more so than ever. Families are falling apart. They're hating each other because they have to live together now every day. But that's a good report. Thanks for sharing that.
And I think the other key thing there, that 20%, maybe, if that research is accurate, here at Focus, we're hearing from people that, they're struggling because they're with a spouse that they are already triggering each other. They're not getting along. And then this gets dumped on top of that pressure and it accentuates the weaknesses that are there. So, equipping yourself to be able to communicate well, understand each other, learn about each other, know each other, that takes work. And hopefully that most desperate 20% will pull back and put the time in that they need to for their own sake and their own marriage.
Yeah. That's great.
We're listening to the familiar voice of Jim Daly from the Focus on the Family radio program, heard on many of these same stations, and you're listening to Pastor's Perspective. Brian Perez here with Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway, Jim Daly joining us via Skype. And what you just said, Jim, about the 20%, you guys at Focus always get, throughout the year, there's always some kind of, you've got your phone lines open and people call for counseling and whatnot. So what kind of things are you getting calls about right now?
Yeah, we're getting about 1,000 calls a day. And the digital space we're up about 15-20% on digital touches. So people are really looking for help and for resources. The themes right now are fear and anxiety, if and depression. That would be the three big hits right now, and within the Christian community even. And it's okay. We're human. We understand that there's going to be those fears. I mean, when people lose their job, that's fearful.
Yeah.
I think I saw on television the other day a news report where a newscaster was talking to someone with their window down, an older man, and he said, "I don't know what to do. I'm retired and my 2 adult children have just moved back with me because they lost their job."
Yeah.
That's tough. And that is happening to many people, 36 million. And so to paint that picture, you don't want to, kind of downplay the pain that's going on out there. Yet at the same time, there's a little bit of guilt for those that are still working and you're kind of having a normal life and you're getting a little bit more time now to reflect on big things. There is a little bit of guilt to that. So hopefully those that are struggling, that are in some pain, they can find help through the church, through the relief programs. And we'll get through this, but maybe we won't be the same.
Yeah. Yeah. And on the other positive side, of course, as you would know, and we're seeing this, just a heightened interest in the things of the Spirit, prayer, people tuning in, our online,
that's good.
Our online services have tripled or quadrupled as far as our, people viewing. And so I've been having conversations around the world, Zoom meetings with different guys, different countries. And basically every place where I'm talking to a group of guys, they're telling me some pretty amazing stories about, the hardest of the hard, all of a sudden softened up, all of a sudden wanting to know, having questions, asking for the link to tune in so they could hear what the Bible has to say. And so, there's the kind of the double-edged sword,
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. You look back and this as a pastor, you look at the early church and they were known for running into plagues, right? In Rome, particularly, I think it was around 264 AD. There was a terrible plague in Rome. 5,000 people a day were dying. And the historians of that time wrote about these unusual people called Christians who were going in and taking care of strangers and laying their lives down for people they didn't know. It's just an amazing tradition of the Christian church to run toward the valley, toward the problem. And then, the Lord meeting him there and understanding, and I'd love your perspective, Brian, as a pastor, but understanding that this life is a vapor. What it's about is eternal life. And the better you get of a grasp of that, the less concerned, the less worried you are about what happens in this life.
Yeah, that's really true. I was just talking to some friends, and, the one thing that we were talking about was how, when you live in comfort all the time, it's hard to remember that. It's hard to remember that, this life is a vapor, that we're actually preparing for the next life. You want to just kind of sink deeper into your comfort. And I was just saying to him, I said, it's the people that have previously suffered that are probably navigating this better than others because they understand that life includes suffering. And, not everybody understands that. For a lot of people, it's like, well, this is, we were talking about some of the extreme statements that people are making, like, oh, we're enslaved, this is the worst thing that's ever happened, as they're eating an In-N-Out burger, they're talking about the...
If only.
So, it's that sort of thing where you're like, you guys need to read a little bit of church history, read some missionary biographies. It'll put everything in perspective. My wife just started a new podcast called Women You Should Know. And she's just, she's super into missionary women. So, and it's a great podcast. Her and her friend are discussing all these ladies, and I'm just like convicted all the time. It's like, man, these women were unbelievable. They faced, just insurmountable kinds of things, and by faith they came through. But they suffered, and they were willing to suffer. And so I'm like, okay, I can't complain about a thing. So,
yeah, it's such a good word. And, if you look at, again, church history, it's not, about comfort and leisure. You know, we do this series with Ray Vanderlaan called That the World May Know, and he's a Jewish scholar. He's been taking trips there for years and years, went to Yeshiva University. It was kind of funny. He completed all the PhD work, and then they said, well, now to get your degree, you need to, convert to Judaism. He said, I had no idea that was the requirement.
No kidding.
So he did all the work for the PhD and didn't get it.
Oh, my goodness.
But in that context, and he teaches high school in Holland, Michigan. But the thing that he said as we went on the trip to Israel, we come into the city with the beautiful remains of a Roman city with the columns and all the marble. And he said, and we're all looking at it going, this is incredible. And he chastises us, saying, this is exactly what Rome suffered from. It was the pursuit of comfort and leisure. But Jesus calls us to suffer and to give of ourselves and to bring shalom, God's peace, to a hurting, chaotic world.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, and again, I'm not a pastor, Brian, like you guys are, but I'm not sure that the church is ready yet, at least in America, to re-embrace what that means to really live for Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we're getting a little bit of a lesson, a little bit of an education right now. So, yeah, good. Well, gosh, it's great to see you, Jim. You were mentioning some of the different people that you've had on the broadcast, and I think it was wasn't Francis Collins on a while back? Did you guys?
Yeah,
right at the beginning
head of
there.
the NIH.
Yeah, NIH, and then we were talking about the head of the CDC being a believer. It's interesting how you've got people who are they have a genuine faith in Christ in some of these really significant positions around the country and around the world. For such a time as this, it's kind of an interesting situation.
It is, and you think about it. I was talking to the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and I asked him because he said, he just is. The State Department, Christian faith is not a highly embraced attitude or belief, and so he's a minority right there within the department that he's running, and it's a big department, the State Department.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, how do you do this? How do you show your faith? And he said something that was so good. He said, Jim, you know what? The best way I can demonstrate my faith is being the best Secretary of State I could be vocationally. And I thought even that is such a great reminder to all of us as Christians to demonstrate our faith, be the best you can be at what vocationally God has called you to do, so that people, they give you the respect that you deserve. And in that way, it opens the door for you to be able to speak into people's hearts about what you believe as a Christian. And he's so good at it. He's so unashamed.
Yeah.
I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. I follow Jesus Christ. Here's what I think.
Yeah.
And he's very good with that. And I think he's just, he grew up in Orange County. He went
Is that right?
Yeah, up until his senior year, he went to Los Amigos High School, which was my wife's rival school at Rancho in Garden Grove.
Yes.
So the two of them, they were just talking like, I hate you. But he's a great dude, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but he's like a Southern California guy.
Yeah.
He's just so easy to talk with and so real about who he is. I think he's one of the best guys in government right now.
Yeah, he seems to be doing a great job. Well, Jim, I know you're on the radio daily, not.
It's because that's his name. I think.
That was a prophetic. You were prophetically named.
Yeah.
So, would you just give a kind of a closing word to a lot of people listen to you on KWAVE, obviously, and our connected stations, and I'm sure they'd love to have just kind of a spontaneous word from you right now.
Well, number one, I so appreciate that partnership with KWAVE because it brings me all the way back to the beginning of my Christian faith. So I love and respect what you guys do. The pastors you have on are people that I've visited most of their churches, whether it was Greg Laurie or all of them. I've been, I think, Downey back then in Downey, Calvary Chapel. So, for me, I love what Calvary Chapel has done too over the years. You just go through the Word line by line, and I love that approach to teaching people Scripture. And I think as we look at it, I can speak to the marriage and parenting side, and so often we in the Christian community, as married people and as parents, we tend to panic. We tend to expect so much out of our kids, perfection. And what matters in the end, in my opinion, is love. Jesus said this, he said, I got 2 commandments for you. And if you can live up to these 2 commandments, you've fulfilled them all. And it's funny for us because we want to overcomplicate it. But Lord, I'd rather try to live all 10. No, I'm telling you, live these 2 and you'll be fine. And that's love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the tougher one's going to be love your neighbor as yourself. And that includes your spouse. No, I don't want to do that. And I just think in a retrospective of what we're going through, I think if we can truly have an appetite to learn to love our spouse and love our kids in that way, the way God intended, I think so many things will fall into place and be reconciled. And the happiest families I see, Brian, are when there's a loving father in the center of that home. And moms do a lot, and I love moms. But it's kind of taken for granted. Mom's going to love me. But I don't know about dad. And when there's a loving Christian father in that home, and the aroma of that family is awesome. And I think that's a great thing for all of us men to aim for. Be that sweet aroma of the Spirit of Christ in your home. Love your wife in a way that your kids go, wow, my dad is so awesome. And if we can do that, we've achieved it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Jim. That's a great word. Yeah.
Absolutely. Jim Daly from Focus on the Family. Thanks for joining us today on Pastor's Perspective here with Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway.
Thanks,
Jim, Bobby used to speak with Family Life Today. I don't know if we were speaking about rivals earlier with the
we
schools
love
in
them.
Garden Grove.
Hey, those guys are great. Dave and Barb and Dennis. And I'm just kind of, now you got my mouth watering for In-N-Out Burger. I'm really bummed out.
Well, hey,
you guys go enjoy one. Have fun.
Okay,
we
will.
When the lockdown is over, Jim, come out. We'll hang out. We'll go to In-N-Out. It's right around the corner.
Yes.
We'll have a good time.
I would love to do that. Don't be surprised when I show up.
Okay, we'll be waiting.
Yes, we will.
Thank you, Jim.
See you guys.
Okay,
Take care.
So sad for people in Colorado that don't have In-N-Out Burger. Right where we are right now, there's one over there, and there's one over there.
That's right.
I mean, that's just...
We're almost surrounded by them.
Yeah, it's really
You know
sad.
what's crazy? I haven't had an In-N-Out Burger since I moved back to California.
Because he keeps eating those pizzas.
Year and a half ago. Isn't that? Yeah, it's because I keep eating those pizzas, and I love In-N-Out.
Well, I eat about 2 In-N-Outs a year.
Okay.
So I mean, I like them, but I just, I'm not like the.
Not on the same day, though.
It's not the teenage diet anymore, right?
No. It's, it's all kinds of factors you have to take into consideration before you eat a double-double.
Have you tried Burger Lounge?
I love Burger Lounge.
I love Burger Lounge too. So that's been, it's not been competing in the pizza kind of realm, but it's definitely.
But does Burger Lounge have Bible verses on the bottom of their cups? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no?
No, they have Quran. No, I'm just kidding. I'm teasing.
All right. Hey, speaking of family, join Bobby Conway and his wife later today. We'll get to see the foil in her hair, or does she take it out of her hair?
The foil will be out of her hair.
Okay.
But yes, today, Brian, we're going to be talking about suicide, suicidal thoughts on suicide. And if anybody's out there, one of the things that we're doing each week right now with mental health awareness is we're taking on different subjects. Last week we took a look at mental health in general. Today we'll look at suicide. We're going to get into depression and anxiety, bullying, some of the different things. But today, in particular, we're going to talk about some of the stats on suicide. We're going to talk about the scriptures, what they say. There's 6 suicides in the scripture. We're going to talk about the cause of suicide, things like people just being in chronic pain or people feeling like they're a burden to other people, struggling from loneliness, guilt, and shame. And we're going to talk about just some solutions on how can we go about preventing this from happening. How do we recognize if suicide is such a pandemic? I mean, every day, you got 800,000 people, I think it is, a year, according to the World Health Organization, that commit suicide. We have, I forget the numbers each day, but basically it's something like 90 people every hour are taking their life. So by the time we finish this program, I mean, the amount of parents and siblings and friends that will be grieving. And it just makes me want to be aware of some of the clues. And so you look at Thomas Aquinas and Augustine and some of their thoughts on it and how it would influence the way that we would see, it's sin, yes, it is sin, but the way that it could create sort of a shame culture around it. I really hope that we can do some work around that today.
Yeah, that's a great ministry because it's a real thing. A couple of years ago, my nephew committed suicide, my sister's son, and I'll tell you, I was just talking to her a couple of days ago. She's a great, wonderful, solid Christian, and sometimes I even forget to pray for her about that. It's still fresh to her, and so I was able to just have a few minutes of encouraging her as I was talking with her on the phone, but just the ongoing agony for those who are left behind, whether it's the parent or the spouse or the sibling or the child. And I think right now, Jim was talking about people struggling with anxiety, struggling with fear, and struggling with depression. And when, for some people, when you get in a place where you just don't see any way out, and, for some people right now, it's like, especially the economic side of things, they might not be all that concerned that they're going to get the coronavirus. Maybe they're not, they don't have those vulnerabilities, right. But they've lost their job. They don't know how they're going to pay their mortgage. And that's a recipe right there that the enemy wants to take and just cast them into despair. And then despair is the final step towards sometimes just saying, okay, I can't do this anymore. So God bless you guys as you reach out.
And one of the things as it relates to suicide, you think about like some of the things that there was a time where the church couldn't talk about, like you think about how we're unfolding about what you can talk about. Like don't talk about having bad marriages, don't argue in front of your kids, maybe, 1950s, 1960s. Thank God for ministries like Focus on the Family and Family Life that have kind of made it okay to talk about, hey, we don't have it all together in the home, in our marriage and in our parenting. And then you kind of just see these layers be taken back like, hey, it's okay to talk about doubt if you struggle with some doubts. And it's okay to talk about mental health issues. But think about how hard it is to sit down and say to someone, I'm dreaming and meditating a lot about taking my life. I've been researching online about the easiest way to pull this off. Because when you mention your thoughts there, you're aware of what a burden that is for somebody else to wear. So now the very thing we need to do is talk about it. The people that we would want to share the most about our pain aren't equipped to even handle that kind of a conversation. Yeah. So you can just see that the kind of work that has to be done here.
Yeah. Oh, it's
heavy.
Yeah. It's a really, really brutal and a wicked thing. Wicked in the sense of what it does.
Yeah.
And what it does to a person that gets driven to that place. And, and sometimes, we talk about educating people and so forth, and sometimes you can have all the education in the world and it just doesn't change anything. I think of, Jared Wilson, who, died some months back. And, his ministry was a ministry where he was seeking to help people have a more mental, a mental health emphasis and encouraging people, trying to help them through depressions and keep them from suicide. And then yet he succumbs to the very same thing. And even more close, last week, Darren Patrick, similar thing. You listen to Darren, he's got a big heart for pastors who are struggling, pastors who are depressed, pastors who have gone through hard things. And then who would have known that he actually would have been that guy and come to that point where he took his life. It's really, really, wow, it's wicked stuff.
It is.
It is. Okay, so that conversation about suicide happening today, Thursday, the 14th of May at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Go to YouTube and do a search for 1 Minute Apologist. And we'll be back in just a couple of minutes with your Bible questions here on Pastor's Perspective. That is me. And yes, we are back. 888-564-6173 is the telephone number. Also here in the studio with me, Pastor Brian Broderson from Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa in Southern California, and Bobby Conway, who's on YouTube. Do a search for 1 Minute Apologist, especially today at 5 p.m. Pacific time when Bobby and his wife will be having a conversation about suicide and then I was going to say you'll open up the phone lines, not the phone lines, but the
Yeah,
the
you got
chat
it, Brian.
function. Yeah, you can ask your questions there. That's today at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And coming up this Sunday at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, right? It's still going on. We haven't canceled it or anything. They haven't shut us down, right?
Drive-in church.
Drive-in church, yes.
Yeah,
it's
we're
going to be
doing
so
it.
much fun.
Yeah, 6 o'clock Sunday evening, right in the big parking lot. We got a great big parking lot at Calvary Chapel. And I noticed, did you notice? Absolutely. Because we can see from where we're sitting, we can see the north parking lot of the church. And we normally have this row of service vehicles, things that we use, for all kinds of different service type things. And quite honestly, it's kind of, just it doesn't really look that good. And they cleared them out. And it's like, look at that.
Where did they put them?
Beautiful.
You're right. They're
hopefully at the junkyard, but I'm not sure. That's what I've been praying.
It's such an eyesore sometimes.
Yeah.
But we're thankful for them. They just need to be a little bit prettier.
Yeah. Some of them definitely need to go to the junkyard. Yeah. But okay, yes. So 6 o'clock Sunday evening, we're going to have a great time. We're going to open up at 5:30, and we really need people to register.
Yes.
Just we're not charging anything, but we just need to get a ballpark figure of how many people are going to come in, and so we can.
Wait,
be
did you just say
too.
ballpark? And now Bobby's thinking of ballpark pizza again. That's, you just triggered him,
Brian.
Yeah, and Bobby's going to bring his ballpark pizza in his car, and he's going to sit in it, and he's going to eat it. Because it's a bring your own snack. We're not serving popcorn. We're not handing out hot dogs or anything.
Actually, I might bring one in here for you guys since all this talk.
Well, I got to have a cauliflower crust because, I'm doing the no gluten thing. And
okay. Well, we can.
Cheryl made a cauliflower crust pizza the other day. And, it's like you can kind of psych yourself up at first and you eat it and you go, that's not bad. That was good. And, gosh, that was good. And then we put it in the refrigerator and then the next day she said, do you want any pizza? And I said, no. And she goes, neither do I. Let's throw it away.
Oh, man.
So it's like, so one cauliflower crust, we did it, and we're done with the cauliflower crust.
So it's like your In-N-Out burger that you only do twice a year.
Twice a year, yeah.
So cauliflower crust is probably another
another 10 years, I think, before we're going to do that. But what does that have to do with drive-in church? We're talking about drive-in church. And
are you sure you don't have ADD?
I feel like I have something right now. So we need to get an idea of how many folks are going to be here. So, but this is really just kind of we just want to do a fun event where we can we're all going to be in our cars. Like I said, bring your own snacks. Make sure you go potty before you get here, because we won't be able to get out. We won't be able to use the restrooms or anything, but we just felt like it would be good just to be together.
Yeah.
Even if we're in cars, we can see each other. We got a little place where we're going to have a platform, and we're just going to sing. We're going to do some music. You're going to be there. You're going to do some fun stuff, like you normally do, some juggling and stuff like that. Yeah. Oh, haven't they told you yet? Okay, yeah.
No,
all right. Haven't. Well, they were going to let you know before Sunday.
Oh boy.
Well, because we're collaborating with KWAVE, right?
Yes,
I mean, everything's going to be in your car, listening on either your radio in your car or listening on your app on your phone, your KWAVE app.
The car would be better because it's in real time. The app might have a few seconds delay. So if you're listening to the app and you start singing, "Bless the Lord, oh my soul," and we're already on the next song.
Yeah, but your windows are going to be rolled up. You're only going to hear yourself. Not really. We're going to encourage people to roll down their window at a certain point, but as long as they have their mask on.
Yes.
So I'm making this up as I go.
I can tell.
But it's going to be great.
It is.
And
it is.
So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's going to be, we're just going to go an hour because we know it, it can get, get a little tough, especially if you have children in your car. And then for those that come that really need some prayer, we're going to actually have a little prayer tent where your car can drive through on your way out and you can get some prayer right there.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But not an oil change or anything like that.
Well, we're working on that too. I don't know if that's going to happen though.
It's kind of like anointing a car with oil when you think about it. No.
Yeah.
But that's this Sunday night at 6 o'clock, Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. Register at cccm.com. Bring snacks, pile as many people as you can into the car, and it's going to be a great evening. And it's not going to be streamed online. The video, I should say, will not be streamed online. Audio will be on the KWAVE app or at kwave.com. But it's going to be great. It's going to be good to see a lot of you there. All All right, 888-564-6173 is our telephone number. Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway here, and let's go to George and San Bernardino. Hello, George. How can we help you?
Hi. Hey, everybody. How you guys doing?
Hey, George.
Good, George.
So I guess I'll just dive right into the question here. Reading Revelation 21, verse 1, says that the sea will be no more. And then when I read Ezekiel 47, verse 8, it says that the river of life will flow into the Dead Sea and bring it back to life. And so I guess when I read that, my imagination kind of figures maybe the wide open oceans will that separate the land might not be anymore, and maybe the smaller bodies of water and the rivers might still be around. And I was kind of curious what you guys would have to say about those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question, and that's one that surfers often ponder. Like, dang, what do you mean there's no sea?
How could it be heaven without a sea?
But okay, two things.
You could write a book on this one, Brian.
Yeah.
Come on.
two things really quick. First of all, the Ezekiel passage is referring to the millennium. So the millennium is, life on earth, and everything on earth, remains the same geographically for the most part. So you have the seas, you have the Dead Sea, you have the river that comes forth from under the throne of God and flows, to the Dead Sea and brings it to life. And but that's during the millennium, the 1,000-year reign of Christ. So the passage in Revelation is referring to the new heaven and the new earth, which is after the 1,000-year reign of Christ. And so whatever that means, we know that there's water because we know that there is a river that runs through the New Jerusalem, and there's the trees on either side of the river that produce fruit that brings health to the nations. So, but exactly what there will be no more seas. The sea in Scripture is oftentimes, there's a bit of a negative connotation to it. Mm-hmm. It's seen as ominous. It's seen as something to be fearful of. It's something that is powerful and destructive and so forth. So, that could play into the reason why it says there are no seas. You got any thoughts on that?
Well, it's an interesting point that you bring up, because that kind of is the connotation that we do see as it relates to the seas. So maybe is there an element where like the troublesome part of the seas will not be here?
Yeah.
As far as a beautiful wave, I can't see anything wrong with looking at that in heaven. At the same token, that Revelation 22:1 does talk about the river of life. Who knows what that river will be capable of doing and how big exactly it'd be. Maybe you can surf that, Brian.
Yeah.
It's hard to know.
They do surf rivers in Germany. I've seen them. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what about the sea creatures now? When you talk about animals being in heaven, and you start thinking about like sea creatures, and, if there was no ocean, then is there going to be any living creatures in the river of life? It's speculation for me here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, George, thanks for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173 is our number. And we're going to go to Eric in Virginia. Wants to know if we will know each other in heaven. Hi there, Eric. How are you?
Hey, how you doing?
All right.
I actually have a completely separate question as well that I thought of after I asked that one.
Okay, well, ask the first one first, the one that's on the screen.
All right. Will we know each other in heaven?
Oh, yeah, that's the one I asked. Okay, so what's the other question?
And then the other question is, me and my better half were having a discussion the other day, and she said somebody told her that Eve eating the apple was her being seduced by Satan sexually.
Okay.
And,
do you know anything about that?
Well, I know it's not true, but, these kinds of, everybody wants to interject sex into everything practically in the Bible. So they can't imagine that it wasn't something that was about sex with Eve and the serpent. It wasn't about sex at all. It had nothing to do with sex. There's nothing in the text to ever even remotely indicate that. The text just says what it was. It was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and the serpent tempted Eve to eat it in defiance to what God had specifically said. So, but Bobby, are we going to know
each other
in heaven?
That's one of the things that is pretty concrete. We don't have real deep understanding on all the intricacies of heaven. We understand that it's going to be, a wonderful place. I mean, we're going to be with the Lord. There's going to be no more tears, no more sadness. Our emotions are going to be glorified. I mean, how great will that be to not have your emotions trouble you anymore? I mean, we all know what it's like to be bothered by worries and fears and anxieties and depressions and doubts and second-guessing ourselves, and that's not going to be in heaven. So to be in this perfect emotional state, and then I think that's just going to make our relationships so flourishing too. I mean, we're going to know each other, we're going to know our loved ones, and our relationships aren't going to be disrupted by our earthly haunted emotions. We're going to be able to spend a perfection with each other, enjoying rich relationships, not getting, angry and bitter and frustrated and wanting to never see each other again. I mean, we're going to enjoy people like never before. I mean, and that's what heaven is. I mean, you're going to enjoy people, and life can kind of burn you out on people. Like in ministry, I mean, it can be painful. I mean, this is the stuff we're talking about with suicide. People give up on people. People hurt. They're tired of it. And I'm just so thankful to think about being with the Lord in these perfect relationships where everything is forever in a harmonious state.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
pretty cool, huh?
Really good,
man.
That it's going to be really good.
Yeah. There's no need of counselors in heaven.
But you do kind of forget
Holy
that.
Spirit.
I think sometimes we miss that aspect of it. Sometimes, of course, there's the reductionism that often goes on when when you think of heaven in terms of, what are we going to do up there? Just float around on a cloud? That sounds so boring. No, we're not going to do that. It's going to be unbelievable. It's going to be, infinitely better than the best moments here on earth. So I love the way you describe that, because it's just so, you think of those relationships that you have now, but they're always interrupted by little things here and there, but to think of that and to think that it's only going to be good. Always good. There's not going to be the rifts. There's not going to be the jealousies. There's not going to be the bitterness that develops in the heart and the coldness that results from that. That's all going to be gone.
Won't it be cool too? Think about maybe just some of the best conversations you've ever had. I mean, like a cup of coffee with a friend that you felt like you could have spent forever there. And that's what heaven's going to be. Think about when the presence of God maybe met you in a worship service or in your car or in a prayer time, and you just sensed it. Like, imagine that presence of God thickly enveloping us in the context of relationships that never have to end. Like, one of the hardest things about life is knowing we're going to have to say goodbye to loved ones. Like, there's people that we're close to, and frankly, you lose enough people that you love deeply, it can also make it hard for you to get close to people. In heaven, we will not have to live with the fear of saying goodbye again. We won't have to live with the fear of doing a funeral, of seeing loved ones go. We will be with our loved ones who believe forever and ever. That's really cool.
I think of my, when I think about this stuff, I always think about first of all, I think about my kids all the way back, to when they were little, and we would come up and we would visit Grandma and Grandpa. And it was like, the minute we said, "Come on, kids, it's time to go home," I mean, there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. It's just like, we don't want to go. We want to live with Grandma and Grandpa. And of course, Grandma and Grandpa are like, "Why are you taking the kids? You kids are so cruel and and all that." But fast forward to today. I think of the same thing, with my grandkids. And every time my granddaughter comes, she comes and she just makes our home her home, and and then when it's time to go, she just does not want to go. And that's it. You don't want to go because it's so precious. And what you're talking about is we don't have to go. We never have to leave.
Pretty cool.
It's the eternal family gathering.
Yep.
With no fights.
That'll be great. Eric, thank you for your phone call today on Pastor's Perspective, 888-564-6173. Let's talk to Ken in Hemet with a question about the reopening of churches. Hey there, Ken. What's up?
Hi, how you doing?
All right.
I followed Don Stewart on Facebook, and he announced today he's You talked to Pastor Tim Thompson of 412 Church Marietta,
Mm-hmm.
and Riverside County voted 5-0 to allow them to have church with no mask and no social distancing. Otherwise, it's back to normal, is what he put on the page.
Wow.
Wow. When was that?
It was posted this morning, or today. I mean, I read it earlier.
Okay. Well, I was just in Riverside County yesterday, and that definitely was not the case yesterday. But if they've done that, we'll see. I think it's just every county's obviously different with the way they're opening up, and so we'll just kind of see how it rolls out.
So what is the deal with the different churches? Because there have been some that are saying that, end of the month they're going to reopen. And
I mean, there's people that feel like, we got to get the church back opened up, and this is wrong, and the church is an essential thing. And I agree the church is essential, but I don't agree that under the current situation that the church has been shut down. I think we've just kind of had to regroup and learn to do church in a bit of a different way. And I think my personal position and conviction on it all is that we need to be patient and we need to cooperate with the powers that be. The Bible is very specific that in Romans 13, Paul says that the governing authorities are there because God placed them there, and we're to be in submission to the governing authorities. And the only time that we can come out from under that submission is if the governing authorities are they're commanding us to break God's law or to deny the faith or something like that. And of course, that's not being done at all. Nothing even close to that is being done. And just because the church is currently closed in the way that we've always known it, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's some vendetta or some kind of a persecution against the church. You look across the country and all kinds of things are shut down. All of the sporting events are shut down, and all of the entertainment industry is basically everything's on hold. Yeah. And so we're not being treated any differently than anybody else. So I think that, to try to imply that somehow there's a persecution agenda of the church behind some of the decisions of these lawmakers, I just think it is. I don't know what's in the hearts of the lawmakers, but I can't see that there's any place currently where there's a clear violation regarding the church's privileges under the Constitution. Mm-hmm. I can't see that. So to me, I personally think it's premature, and I think we need to be patient and we need to cooperate until there's a clear reason that would say, okay, now this is a different situation, and so now we're going to have to talk about it differently.
Yeah, I think I heard somebody or read something online that, the church has always said, the church is not the building, it's the people. But now, for some places, it does seem like
the church is the building.
The church is the building.
Yeah.
So,
isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Didn't you just say last week that the church? Yeah,
well,
so,
I think of the letters. They're called the general epistles. Peter, 1st, 2nd Peter, James, John's included in those two. And Bobby, I think it's both James and 1st Peter. Peter addresses the pilgrims that are scattered. Mm-hmm. He's talking about them as they are currently a scattered flock in the sense, scattered throughout the different regions and so forth. And, and I talked about this on Sunday, but, just to say that you can't really be the church unless you gather in a building and you do things a certain way, that's just a really limited understanding of what the church is, biblically even, So, and it's helpful if you go back, even like we said to Jim earlier, if you go back and you do a little bit of historical research, you'll find that there have been times when the church hasn't been able to meet in the traditional way that we've always met, but the church hasn't stopped being the church, and we certainly haven't stopped being the church. And so, I again, Sunday I addressed this head on because I think the I think the call to open up on the 31st of May against the governor's wishes or guidelines, I think that is actually a violation of Romans 13.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks for your phone call, Ken. Next, we're going to go to Stephen and Aliso Viejo. Thank you for calling 888-564-6173. How can we help you?
Hi. Thanks for having the call. So after the flood, there was basically just Noah and his family. My question is to all the different types of ethnicities, skin tones, hair colors, eye colors, everything. How did all these other types of people come about if there were just those families? I'm going to go ahead and hang up.
Okay. Bobby?
That's a good question, Stephen. You think about, here's Noah and his family, and they're existing after the flood, and now how are we going to account for such a systemic group of people that we now live amongst today in our world? And it is believed that it would have flowed through Shem, Ham, and Japheth, who were Noah's sons, as they spread out, and then as they went out to their different regions, and as they began to populate, there would just be further movement. And that would be how we would account for the diversity that we see in humanity today. I mean, even if you think about it, God's intention was for there to be diversity before the Tower of Babel. They were wanting to stay grouped together, and they were supposed to spread out. And through a spreading out, just being in different climates, being in different environments, all of that eventually will work its way into producing some rich diversity amongst humanity.
What do you think, Stephen?
That's kind of what I was expecting to hear as well, because I believe science and biology all goes hand in hand with the Bible itself. For me, if anything helps prove the Bible, science helps prove the Bible is true. So that's kind of what I was expecting to hear.
I mean, even like a lot of what modern day science is showing today, I mean, if you could get back to an original pair, or, I mean, some people talk about the mitochondrial Eve, and we end up getting into some of, how, like, let's just say you weren't a believer at all. How many pairs? Like, I mean, you're going to have an original pair somewhere. I mean, it's anyway. I mean, if you were to take like the evolutionary process, let's just take the evolutionary story. You're going to have, an original pair, and then diversity is going to come through them being diversified and spreading out. So this isn't even, I mean, it's great. We can say Shem, Ham, and Japheth can account for that. They're going to spread out. Their descendants are going to spread out. But I don't even think you have to have a Christian explanation to reason from the fact that you're going to have diversity from a pair, unless you're going to say that there was spontaneous generation of just multiple pairs, and an Asian pair, an African pair, a Caucasian pair.
They just spontaneously generated. They just showed up
ex nihilo
one day. Yes. And that, just when you think about, and obviously God built into the DNA just this tremendous potential for diversity, right? I mean, when you think of people, and you think of all of the people that you've ever met in your whole life, and unless you're looking at identical twins, nobody looks alike. And have you ever thought, it just kind of tripped out on that whole thing, like, how can you take just the same features, ears, nose, eyes, mouth, and how could you make billions of different versions of that? That's just it's like inconceivable, but God did it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And that's all built into the genetic structure. And, you see it obviously with animals. You see the tremendous diversity with birds and with
the
fish
cherubim and their four faces.
Yeah, exactly. And their 4 wings or their 6 wings or whichever they had. Yeah.
Thank you for your phone call, Stephen. And that is about all the time we have on today's program, because that little piece of music is about to start any second now.
There it is.
It is. Okay, that means the program's over, but we'll be back tomorrow, 3 p.m. Pacific time, to answer more of your Bible questions. But before that happens, we've still got to get through today. 5 p.m., 1 hour from right now, Bobby Conway and his wife will be on the 1 Minute Apologist YouTube channel. and they'll be discussing suicide. They'll be opening up the chat there so that you can send in your questions. And again, that begins at 5 p.m. Pacific time today. Thanks so much for listening and for watching. For Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway, I'm Brian Perez. Have a great evening. God bless you. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.